Hello and welcome back to Identity Architects, the podcast that spotlights pioneers in our industry who are changing the way that data is used to drive more engaging data-driven experiences. I'm your host Ben Cicchetti, VP of Corporate Marketing here at InfoSum. And for this episode, our Enterprise Sales Manager, Kate Blaxill, sat down with Nic Travis, Head of Paid Digital Marketing at Lloyds Banking Group, to discuss data privacy, data ethics, the value exchange, and much, much more. Before I hand over to Kate, just a reminder to hit that subscribe button so you know when the latest episode of Identity Architects lands. But without any further delay, here's Kate's chat with Nic.
Hi, welcome to the podcast. So glad you could join us, as I know you have a fountain of knowledge when it comes to data and identity. So I'm very excited to hear what you have to say on the topic. I'm Kate, as you know, from the UK sales team at InfoSum, and I work directly with brands and media agencies. So let's kick this thing off. For anyone who doesn't know you, can you give us a quick intro to Nic Travis and Lloyds Banking Group? Who are you and what do you do?
So Nic Travis, I head up digital marketing and public website content at Lloyds Banking Group. Lloyds are clearly one of the UK's largest banks, 250 years old. We are a multi-brand bank, so Lloyds, Halifax, Bank of Scotland, Scottish Widows, MB&A, just to name a few. Something like kind of 25 million kind of customers across the across the estate, across varying kind of different products and brands. I'm a kind of a digital marketeer for as long as I can remember. I studied it at university, so I got 20 plus years of experience, which I suppose makes me old these days, as well as experience. But yeah, I am. I think it's kind of rare breed of kind of a kind of technical marketeer, a kind of a bit of a data nerd, and also quite kind of hands-on in kind of website builds and kind of AI and various other kind of techery. But also still kind of in charge of kind of driving the kind of creative kind of direction for our digital stuff as well. So.
Amazing. Well, it definitely sounds like you're the perfect candidate for our podcast, and excited, I guess, to kick off with talking about some of kind of the experiences you've had within the industry. So just to kind of warm things up a bit, I guess we're going to dive into a few quick fire kind of fun questions. Number one, what is your earliest memory of advertising?
Yeah, I thought long and hard about this. The ad I remember, the one I remember the earliest, and I'm sure there's others, but definitely the one that always sticks with me is that John West kind of salmon ad where the kind of John West man comes out creeping out the woods and kicks a bear in the private parts to steal the fish from him. With the kind of strapline of John West goes really far for your fish or something like that. I can't remember the marketing exactly, but yeah, I always remember that one. So a real kind of tangible experience of how kind of great advertising that is both fun, kind of creates those kind of memorable experiences that live with people forever. So.
Yeah, amazing. I mean, I think we were talking about it in the office yesterday, and I know this isn't me answering the questions, but for me, it's that chew it advert where they go, we like to chew it. Anything with kind of a strong jingle is good. So what was your first job in either advertising or marketing? I guess what kind of got you into the space?
Yes, I mean, I did, as I alluded to I did an e-commerce degree. I think I did the UK's first e-commerce degree, although that's what they told us during the prospectus. I don't think I ever actually checked, but I mean, it was early. So it was like 2001, 2002. So yeah, I did the e-commerce degree, and then I finished, and I started at Phones for You in their contact center as a kind of temporary kind of staff. And I deliberately taken the job there because I knew they had a website, and they were also 5 minutes from my house, which was quite convenient. So I used
Nice.
to, on my lunch breaks, I used to go and sit outside the e-commerce department and badger the kind of 2 or 3 guys that were kind of running their e-commerce team into how I thought I could help them improve. Until basically they got sick of the sight of me and said, all right, then if you think you can do it, you can kind of come up here and we'll test you out. And then never look back. Right? Phones for You was an interesting environment to kind of work in, whereby a couple of people could leave and suddenly this kind of 23-year-old kid who's got kind of virtually no experience apart from his big mouth. They could go, "Oh, can you do this?" And they'll be like, "Oh, I think I can, yeah." And then off you go, and you're given the opportunity to kind of build a kind of e-commerce team across kind of paid search and affiliates and SEO, and do acquisitions of other kind of mobile businesses. So yeah, that was my first job. And kind of, I was super lucky to get that one, and it has been a solid foundation for everything I've done since.
Yeah, amazing. You don't often hear people kind of use their degree actually relating to their first job. So yeah, well done for that.
I don't find too
Knowing,
many.
knowing what you know now, what would you say to yourself when you started your career? I mean, it sounds like you had a very good kind of early start career path, but still a good question.
Yeah. I would think it's just it's probably a little cliche, but you're capable of so much more than you think you are. It's always my advice to kind of any junior members of the team, right? Don't be scared of anything, right? Those bits where you're the most scared, they're the bits where you're going to learn the most about yourself, and you can do just about anything, right? You might not know how to do it, and it might scare the hell out of you that you don't know how to do it. But take those steps. Like, those are the bits where you'll learn the most about yourself and where you'll develop the most skills.
Yeah, amazing feedback. What do you love most about what you do right now and the industry we're in?
I mean, so I've always loved digital marketing. I've been doing it for 20 plus years, and I've reflected on this kind of many times. And the bit I love about it is never the same, right? If I look at the industry that I started in, and we just had paid search, and then we brought in affiliates and display, and I've literally watched the kind of landscape layer on complexity and then tie itself in knots and layer on some more complexity and then kind of remove a bunch of stuff that ends up adding more complexity, right? I love the fact that it never stands still. There's always new things to learn, new kind of channels, new ideas, new devices, platforms, technology, right? And it's never ending. For some people that can kind of feel exhausting and frustrating, but I thrive in that, and that is genuinely what kind of makes me kind of get up in the mornings.
Yeah, I mean, I completely agree with that. I think even in the past 2 years since I've been at InfoSum, things have changed dramatically within kind of our industry, within the digital marketing ecosystem. You're always learning. So yeah, definitely a great industry to be in. I guess within our industry, we're obviously obsessed with the concept of identity at the moment. It's what this podcast is all about. So one of the questions I've got for you is, obviously identity is the ability to identify individuals across devices and platforms, but how would you actually explain the term to a 10-year-old? Always a tricky question.
How would you explain it to a 10-year-old? So I think the bit about identity is to keep it as simple as possible. I think you have to just explain in what is it doing, right? Your identity is in it's kind of fungible as well, isn't it? Right. So identity in a kind of a social platform is actually kind of more of a one-to-one kind of thing. Identity on a kind of connected TV is more of a household thing. So what is identity is not a particularly easy question to answer. So it's more about kind of how do you use the information on any kind of given device to kind of deliver kind of relevant kind of ads, right? So if I was explaining it to my 10-year-old, I would be, uh, your device knows that you watch or play X, Y, or Z, right? And therefore, your device is able to kind of broadcast to the advertisers to say they're interested in these things, and you're going to see ads about kind of Fortnite, I would imagine.
Nice. Perfect explanation. So a few fun ones at the end. What keeps you awake at night? Work related. Well, actually, it doesn't have to be, but I guess that's the aim of the question.
Um, so I'm super passionate about kind of data ethics, right? So that's not regulation. It's ethically what should we be doing with customer data? Would a customer reasonably expect that with the consents that they've given us and the transparency over our current disclosures, would they reasonably expect that we would use their data in this way? And I think kind of there needs to be kind of more focus in the industry around kind of ethics, and organizations, and setting their own kind of ethical standards of who do you want to work with, right? Do the kind of
Yeah.
and ad tech partners reach your ethical standards, not the kind of have they got some kind of GDPR loophole they can get through, or X, Y, what data do they take? How do they do it? Does it kind of, are you comfortable that it meets your ethical standards and that you are comfortable, therefore, being associated with them? So yeah, data ethics is the bit that kind of keeps me awake at night, and making sure that we do the right thing at all times with the kind of trust that has been put in us from our customers.
Perfect. And would you say that that's also what kind of motivates you in the morning? I know you mentioned already that our sort of changing industry is one of the things that kind of gets you up in the morning, but is there anything else specifically?
Well, I mean, I'm a performance marketeer at heart, so kind of, getting up and kind of making sure we've got the kind of most effective marketing activity that we can, and that it's driving the kind of business results is genuinely what gets me out of bed, and has done in any job I've been in.
Oh, great. Um, and I guess that this leads on to, if there was a song that was the soundtrack of your life, or a song that perhaps would get you up in the morning, what would that be?
So I went on a slightly different angle on this one. Rather than necessarily a soundtrack to your life, I went for a kind of soundtrack to my work life, and kind of
Okay.
interconnected into the conversation we've already been having. I went for a bit of an obscure one, Shed 7, Chasing Rainbows, because I feel like digital marketing is a little bit like that, right? It's just as you feel like you're approaching that pot of gold, the thing is off over the next hill and off you go again. I think that kind of sums up my career in digital marketing, is forever kind of chasing rainbows.
Oh, what a great analogy. I'm
Yeah.
afraid to say I actually don't know that song, so I'll have to listen to it afterwards, but very, very good analogy. Okay, so we've been through the fun stuff. Let's kind of deep dive into what Identity Architects podcast is all about. The specific topic related questions. So if we begin, I'd like you to take us on a journey. How has Lloyds Banking Group been preparing for the first party data era and the cookieless future? And what are your thoughts on the status quo in the industry right now?
Yeah, I mean, I love this question in its breadth and depth. It's a real kind of meaty one to kind of get stuck into. So I think first and foremost, at Lloyd's, we are a kind of very risk averse business that kind of has focused very much on making sure that we have proper consents, and what we are doing is transparent, and that the users have an understanding of what it is and an ability to opt out of it. And therefore, our kind of journey has been very much focused on building those appropriate consents into the correct parts of the journey, and making sure that the users are able to kind of opt in and out of those at their kind of discretion. So that's the first thing. That was the kind of foundation for us. I think partly by accident, we ended up slightly having to kind of run at this a bit faster than lots of other kind of businesses, owing to the fact that our application forms and our website are on two different domains. So back in 2017, when Apple scrapped the third-party cookie, we lost all of our tracking. But we could no longer see any conversions in Safari. So this kind of
Wow.
this bit that lots of other businesses are facing into is the impending disaster. Has been our disaster for quite some time, and therefore we've been having to try and innovate and to kind of make sure that we've got the consents, make sure that we've got the kind of server-to-server integrations, and kind of building kind of cookieless solutions for the last kind of few years in order to kind of get our own house in order and get back to where we were. So at the time, that was particularly frustrating in that no one else was really feeling the same pain as us. And compounded on top of that, then we've also had the migration of lots of our kind of applications from web to mobile app, and the kind of how do we kind of track between the kind of the web and app, when the kind of bank security kind of procedures around SDKs have been kind of quite challenging for us to kind of get SDKs in and doing the things that we need them to do. So, yeah, lots of measurement issues that I think we've probably been running at for a lot longer than a lot of other advertisers.
Yeah, I mean, comparatively, it definitely seems like Lloyds Banking Group is slightly ahead of the curve, I think, in their kind of first party data journey based on what you've just said. But it sounds like because of those sort of issues you had to overcome early on.
Yeah. Plus,
And actually, that leads me on, I guess.
I suppose I would also kind of say that we've also seen the strategic benefit in utilizing our first party data, right? To create a great banking experience requires us to be able to kind of reach, cliche or not, reach the right customers with the right products in our instance at the right times. Like, people do not want a loan every kind of month, right? In reality, they don't want a loan kind of very often in their life, right? So the average person maybe takes out kind of 5 or 6 loans in their lifetime, probably between the ages of kind of 20 and kind of 50, right? That means that you're trying to sell a loan every kind of decade, really. So you don't want to just be pushing loan actual kind of apply for a loan message out all of the time to all of your audience. So it's incumbent on us to kind of take the data that we've got and our understanding of where customers are in their kind of life stages and life cycles, to try and make sure that we get the kind of most relevant kind of products or the most kind of relevant kind of messaging about the products in front of people to help them prepare for what comes next, or to help them kind of complete their financial task that is in front of them.
Yeah, sounds good. I think based on kind of how Lloyds Banking Group, or how you've been preparing for this kind of first party data era, has there been any specific challenges other than what you've already kind of spoken about that you've had to overcome, and any, I guess, really specific learnings from that you can share? I guess specifically ones that could be of interest, so I guess other kind of highly regulated industries.
Yeah, I mean, I think I speak to lots of other advertisers about this sort of stuff all the time, and the most common one is consents. Lots of people are very comfortable with kind of cookie notices and just kind of popping them up. In many respects, I think lots of people were too comfortable with cookie notices, that they thought they covered them to do more things than they actually did. And as we kind of step into this kind of world of server-to-server integrations and sharing kind of hashed kind of personal information and identifiers, and doing kind of more kind of in-depth kind of integrations with kind of publishers and platforms. Um, Lots of advertisers are starting to kind of, well, my cookie consent doesn't cover me to do this. My privacy notice doesn't cover me to do this. How do I do it? That is the hardest bit, right? It was the bit we did first before we attempted anything. I do see there's a kind of there are some advertisers who are still trying to just use cookie policies and privacy notices to kind of get around all of it. I would go back to my kind of data ethics argument. I think, like, for me, I think you're on, if you are doing that, you are in a, I'm not even sure it's a grey area. I would argue you're potentially in breach of GDPR, or probably in breach of GDPR. And that you should be kind of asking yourselves, how do you kind of get a more kind of robust kind of consent framework in? But that is, each business's, each legal's department's kind of job to kind of go through and kind of figure that one out. For us, it was about kind of trying to figure out, where do we capture our consent? Where's the most optimal place to do it? I was loath to put our consent journey into application forms, just because the context isn't right. In the kind of application journeys, people are kind of preconditioned to say no to all the marketing stuff, right? Whereas we kind of eventually opted to put it into our app onboarding journey, where I just think the dynamic is different. The first time someone downloads your app, it's all about, how can I get the most out of this experience? What can you do for me? And that just felt like a better place to embed our consent, and has been kind of supported in the kind of consent rates that we've seen. So yeah, I think that's the biggest issue for people, just understanding what consents are required. Where can you capture your consents? How can you make sure that the consents are kind of robust enough to be kind of GDPR, or whatever the UK equivalent is these days, compliant?
Yeah, 100%. And I talk to brands and agencies every day, and it's the difference between, the difference to how advanced brands are in this first party data journey is vastly wide. And I think, as you said, making sure you don't kind of skip or cut corners around the consent piece is obviously going to save you work further down the line. So yeah, and is more ethical, as you said. So talking about consumers and their needs, from your point of view, why is it so important for companies to put their consumer first and include them and their wishes in business decisions?
Yeah, I suppose ultimately for me, again, this comes down to kind of our data ethics, right? It's not our data; it's the customer's data, right? If you're guided by that, it kind of makes you kind of think about, well, what data am I capturing? Do I need to capture the data that I've captured? If I do need to capture it, would the customer agree that I need to capture it? And how does me utilizing this data kind of benefit me or the customer, right? And if that benefits more me than customer, is that right? And that's partly what the GDPR balancing test is all about, right? So um, I always think, let's collect the right data. Let's make sure that we can use it to kind of um, actively kind of make the kind of customer experience better, and that doing so, the customer would agree. Right? There's lots of different kind of use cases within the bank, right? Most of which I would hope the customers would expect us to do. Right? If we know a customer isn't eligible for a loan or a credit card, is it right for us to use that information to exclude them from advertising about those products? That is ethically the right thing to do, right? We shouldn't talk to customers about products we know they aren't eligible for, right? It kind of creates a bad brand experience. It creates a bad customer experience. It creates potential kind of detriment, kind of against kind of credit scores and stuff. So that is the right thing to do, and we would expect our customers would expect us to be doing that sort of stuff. Likewise, if a customer is eligible for a kind of specific product or promotion, and we've seen them looking for that product, they would probably expect us reasonably to reach out and kind of make sure that they're aware of the promotion that we've got on that product. So yeah, that's how we get guided by, right? Using this data and using the kind of targeting capability we've got should create kind of better experiences. It should make the brand seem more relevant and more in touch with the kind of customer's kind of needs and situation, and should be kind of therefore beneficial to both sides of the kind of the exchange.
Definitely. And I think for such a strong kind of brand like Lloyds Banking Group, it's all about building that trust, right, with your consumers as well. So it's important to make sure kind of you're doing everything that you can to do that. Given that, I guess, in your kind of view, how should the industry view empowering consumers to take control of their data in order to build, I guess, a more powerful ecosystem? Like, how can you make your customers feel more confident as well in taking advantage of kind of the tools that are around to do this?
Yeah, I mean, I think this is a really, really interesting area. That at some point, there's lots of regulations around kind of what advertisers and platforms should be doing. I would like there at some point to be a kind of focus on kind of centralizing some of this kind of identity and advertising kind of preferences bit. I mean, they've had a go at kind of ad choices and stuff. But I'd like to see that be taken a step further, right? Kind of creating a kind of a proper centralized kind of identity kind of management piece whereby users can manage their preferences, but also a vehicle whereby consumers and users of these platforms can be educated on kind of, ultimately the internet is free for nearly all of the content that's on it, and free at entry, free to use, but very. And the reality is, it's free because we all kind of signed this kind of contract without knowing it, that you can use this for free, but people are going to advertise to you, and that's what actually makes it free. But everyone seems to have signed that contract, but not really understand that they have. So, I do think there's a kind of the potential benefit of kind of creating a kind of a centralized kind of ad choices type thing that enables people to kind of choose which ads they're getting, which ads they don't want to get, which how much data they want to disclose and not disclose. If you can imagine a center whereby you're able to see these are the ads you're going to get if you turn off personalization, and these are the ads you're going to get if you turn on personalization, right? That if you just ask that question, everyone goes, "Oh, I don't want personalized ads." Where actually, if you show the ads, they'll be like, "Well, yeah, I mean, I don't want a lot of ads about kind of women's trainers or business accounts or kind of card readers or stuff that's just of no interest to me." Right? And then you look at the other set of ads and you think, "Oh, right, there's kind of a bunch of stuff about kind of." Just me, obviously, football and cars and whatever else. That's me. If I'm going to see ads, which you are going to see ads, the internet is funded on them. I'd rather see the ones that are aligned to my interests than the ones that aren't. And so, yeah, I do think that's where we kind of need to get to, a kind of a more honest discussion around how the internet works, and also kind of I think doing it through some sort of kind of education centralization bit. Although appreciate. It's incredibly complicated today.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's really interesting because the amount of conversations I've had with my mom or like my grandma, where they're that exact same conversation where they're saying, "Oh, I don't want to be kind of tracked across the internet." And then you say, "Okay, but wouldn't you rather have personalized ads as to just having kind of random ones?" Like the only way really to get around that is to pay I guess, a subscription fee or go down some kind of other model. So yeah, it's an interesting point. What would your prediction of the future of data collaboration and privacy be? And where do you see the industry in the next 5 to 10 years?
Yeah, it's another good question. I mean, I think we carry on the trajectory that we're on, right? Where data privacy and regulation become kind of more restrictive from an advertiser sense, right? But I think that I think that is a good thing for advertisers and customers. I think it forces advertisers to get the proper consent and do the proper disclosures, and for customers then to make informed choices about the advertisers that they want to engage with and the content that they want to see from them. So yeah, I think this trend continues, if not accelerates. But the net effect of that over the kind of long term is that advertisers are able to kind of, and you see this already starting to pop up, right? You've got your kind of FMCGs and kind of telcos and TV people, your newspapers, right? There are subscription walls popping up everywhere, right?
Yeah.
And these subscription walls are enabling brands and advertisers and platforms to understand more about their users than ever before, to understand exactly who they are and what they're doing. And that is, for the advertisers and platforms that are able to do it right and to disclose it right, and make sure that kind of customers have got that kind of full kind of understanding of what's going on with it. There's huge upside there, right? So I do think this is long-term good for both advertisers, so all three, for advertisers, platforms, and kind of customers.
Yeah, definitely. So finally, we're very nearly at the end of our podcast. But I wanted to see if there's anything you were kind of desperate to say and haven't been able to say yet. Anything that you wanted to add, essentially.
Yeah, I suppose, I mean, we haven't really talked about kind of the use of clean rooms too much, which I genuinely think are a really interesting innovation. And I'm not going to kind of sit here and shamelessly plug InfoSum. You guys can do that without me. I do. They are an innovation that allows kind of collaboration in a kind of really kind of safe, privacy-led way, and that will become an increasingly important part of the kind of the marketing mix. I'm not going to say digital marketing mix, right? For me, kind of digital and traditional are one and the same things, and kind of on your 5-year time horizon we were discussing, they'll be indistinguishable by the kind of end of that. So the ability to kind of use clean rooms to get into TV, into press, into radio, and to kind of understand before you buy activity, what your customer's doing, where are they kind of going, got a really kind of niche brief about something, to be able to kind of go in and use the kind of clean room process to find out where would my advertising be most effective, and then to be able to go and kind of execute and kind of buy against it. I think that's kind of really kind of transformative. And I also think it's like the most compliant kind of way of kind of doing kind of data and kind of targeting.
Yeah, great. I was hoping that you'd talk about clean rooms when you were talking about the future of collaboration and privacy. So yeah, glad to hear that you're kind of pro the way that they can help within that space. Finally, this podcast is all about kind of individuals who've pioneered new ways to use data to deliver better customer experiences. So when you look at people you admire in the industry, is there anyone you'd nominate for us to interview in an upcoming episode? Tricky question, but hopefully there's lots of people.
I mean, I haven't actually spoken to him about this, but yeah, there's Adam College at Farfetch, or Hitesh at Shell, are both kind of really interesting people when it comes to kind of data and tech.
Fab. Thanks for the recommendation. So that's a wrap. Thank you so much for joining us. What a great way to spend a Friday morning. And that was just as interesting and informative as I hoped it would be. Thank you, Nic.
Good stuff. Thank you very much.
Thanks again to Nic for joining us on Identity Architects. You know, these podcasts are designed to focus on innovation in data and identity. And I'm always so thrilled to hear how often our guests are hyper-focused on the consumer and doing right by them. As Nic puts it, this comes down to data ethics, because it's not our data, it's the customer's data. All that leaves for me to do is to remind you to hit that subscribe button so you know when the next episode of Identity Architects lands. But until then, thanks for listening.